Right, I'll kick us off with our first story, and this one is a really cool one, George. I know both you and I are excited for it, and that is that the first ever nonprofit backed satellite has been launched into space to collect data on methane, which is a critical component of what causes climate change. So, the Environmental Defense Fund's MethaneSAT became the first nonprofit satellite to be launched into space last week, as reported in many outlets. Now, the satellite made its journey aboard a SpaceX rocket, how most things end up in space these days, and will provide, quote, free, accurate, high resolution quantification of total emissions to the public to enable both countries and companies to identify, manage, and reduce their emissions and allow investors, gas buyers, and the public to see and compare results. This is one of the most comprehensive efforts to map methane production across the globe. The satellite will provide key insights that were previously unavailable, particularly in regions that were under in their release of methane. And the project is designed to focus exclusively on methane, and they hope, because it's the Environmental Defense Fund, that the data will enable climate scientists, advocacy groups, media, and the public to then go on to hold governments, policymakers, and industries accountable. George, congratulations to the nonprofit sector on our first nonprofit satellite. This is so freaking cool.
We did it! Satellites in space to track cow farts, right? This is a cow fart tracker, right? That's where all this methane comes from. I was actually looking it up, though. Even though it's a misnomer that cow farts, it's cow burping, actually, that leads to the disproportionate amount of livestock methane out there. And it roughly attributes 4% of U.S. greenhouse gas emissions, according to the EPA, for cattle and other types of livestock animals. But I think, getting back to this, methane is important for tracking. If you're wondering, like, I thought it was all CO2, like, I think they're just very focused on methane in particular because it is so much more effective, in the bad way, at trapping heat in the atmosphere. And so by showing this view of the impacts and sources of methane, the step one is, you can't manage what you can't measure. And this is a great example of pulling together the resources to show the industry what's going on so that we can then make those types of changes focused on in and around methane.
Yeah, George, it's really cool. And I love the thinking behind this. The idea is that a NASA satellite that goes up is measuring, 15 different things. It's doing all these complicated surveys. This is one satellite for one job, which really hones both the data and the story the data is trying to tell, which, if you're the Environmental Defense Fund, you're trying to tell that story that, hey, we need to do something about this. And some additional facts about methane, for those who don't know: methane is a chemical compound consisting of one carbon atom and 4 hydrogen atoms. It's colorless, odorless, and flammable, and it's the main component of natural gas. It's when you see those natural gas refineries, the little thing that's going up in flames, that is methane burning into the atmosphere. The primary sources of methane include agriculture, as you talked about, livestock farming, rice cultivation, fossil fuel production, landfills and waste management, as well as biomass burning. Why is it damaging to the climate? As you mentioned, it's really, really good at trapping heat, in fact, more efficiently than CO2. And for that reason, methane is responsible for about 20% of the global warming caused by human activities. So reducing it is, in some ways, according to the Environmental Defense Fund, one of our best shots about reining in climate change and hitting our global targets. So really, really cool work. Read more about this in Nonprofit Newsfeed, the newsletter, but great to see science and science advocacy and space and data coming together to hopefully create real impact down the road.
I know it's going to happen when we post this to YouTube and get the inevitable comments that, like, we're talking about man-made sources of greenhouse gases, and they're like, no way, it's all nature. Like, frankly, we wouldn't have that amount of methane being pushed out into the world if not for these particular human activities. I'm going to put it another way. If you were trapped in a garage and you had a bunch of methane being created by, let's say, a cow inside of it, and you had to live inside that garage, you would eventually die because you would run out of the types of atmospheric necessities that humans need. Now, just imagine, instead of the word garage, I'd said Earth. There's a finite amount of space on Earth in our atmosphere. And we are putting gases in it that would kill us if we were locked in a garage with them. I just have a hard time getting my head around folks that don't acknowledge that humans play a role in this. But let the YouTube comments flow.
Absolutely. And George, important to note, humans famously have only been able to live on one such planet. So let's hope we take care of the one we got.